guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 45. Iron Game Chalk Talk is a weekly podcast where I bring you experts in the field and we talk shop each week. If you've not already done so, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube or iTunes so that you get the weekly updates of the new shows, or join us on my mailing list at ronmckeefery.com, where I send out a weekly email letting you know about the latest guests and any of the other things that I have going on. On the website, we also make sure to bring you all the show notes with the links that are mentioned in each episode so that you have that as well. This week, I'm excited to bring you Latrice Sales from the NCAA. Latrice is the Associate Director of the NCAA Sport Science Institute. I got a chance to get to know her a little bit. She's spoken at the CSCCa conference. She's attended for the last several years, speaking at the NCAA or NSCA conference as well. And just a great resource, a great advocate for strength and conditioning. She's doing some really good things, and wanted to make sure we brought her on the show. We talked a little bit about how the profession is viewed outside of our profession, outside of our core group of coaches. How is it viewed by the NCAA as well as some of the other organizations that make up the NCAA? How we can influence positive change rather than kind of being retroactive, being proactive. And then what's the process of law origination and passage, and how we can get involved in that and create some positive change throughout the NCAA. I know you're going to enjoy this episode, but before we get started, I want to make sure that we recognize our sponsors, EliteForm.com as well as Ignition APG. This week I want to highlight Ignition. You know, they've really got a lot of great things going on right now. They're finishing up their pro training, combine and pro day training, as well as getting into training some of their NFL athletes, getting ready for camps. They got a sports certification or speed certification going pretty soon here, and I was able to do this last year while I was in Cincinnati, and Cliff and Ben and the gang there do a phenomenal job. They put on a first class event, and it's April 11th and 12th, and I'm telling you, if you can make it, it would be well worth your while. If you have not already done so, make sure you like their Facebook page so you can stay up with all the different things that they got going on. Ben just had a fighter get back from boxing, I think in Vegas. I'm not sure where it was at, but just a great organization, great company, and truly appreciate what they do for us by helping to provide this show to you for free. Lastly, if you enjoy these podcasts, you will really enjoy Strength on Demand. Strength-ondemand.com is an online archive of strength and conditioning clinic presentations that I've taken from different clinics and continue to add to and bring to you on your time anywhere that you have access to an internet connection. So make sure you check out strength-ondemand.com. Sit back and enjoy this episode. I'll see you on the flip side. All right, guys, you could probably tell Latrice Sales on the other side here. She's presented at both of our national conferences, I believe, right?
Yes.
And does a fantastic job of being an advocate for the strength coach. And so I wanted to get her on the show and just to kind of, you know, we always talk about the things that we could be doing better as a profession, especially as it comes and as it relates to, being involved with the NCAA. And so Latrice has been a fantastic supporter of strength and conditioning, and she's always answered my questions very thoroughly and provided everything that I needed. So I thought it'd be great to get you on the show. Appreciate you coming on. Thanks a lot.
No problem. It's good to be here.
Latrice, for the people that don't know you as well, kind of talk a little bit about your journey, how you got to your current position and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I was a track and field student athlete at Coastal Carolina University, and, my major was in health promotion and business management, and I just really liked being in the weight room. Before I got to Coastal, I was at the Citadel Military College for 2 years, and then I transferred to Coastal, and I really have to thank Jim Peel and Todd Laird, the strength coaches there, because I just really like being a part of that, being in the weight room, and I learned a lot from those guys. And so at Coastal, after I graduated, I was a student assistant, so I worked in the weight room, worked with the golf team, worked a little bit with track and field, and then I coached track and field too. And then after that, I went on to grad school, Georgia Southern University, got my master's in kinesiology, exercise science. And I did a lot with kids there, did youth sport programs, youth physical activity programs there. That's a real passion of mine, is just, youth and getting them more active. We're seeing a lot of youth who aren't participating in team sports, and they're just not active at all. So I did a lot of work with that. That was my thesis, was in helping kids to get more active, using a Spark program curriculum to get kids more active. And then from there, I moved to the DC area, and I did corporate fitness and wellness programs. It's really interesting because I worked at the FDIC, and there's a bunch of lawyers and accountants, and they purposely work 10 to 12-hour days so they can have a 4-hour work week. They get an extra day off, of their choosing. And they would come down to the fitness center, and they would just be like, well, my doctor says I need to lose weight. I mean, there's no motivation. I'm used to working with kids who have energy for days, and athletes who are motivated to do whatever it takes, to, these middle-aged guys who have just very stressful lives, and it's just like, I don't even want to be here.
Right.
So it's just really interesting kind of doing that. And from there, actually a classmate of mine who was at Georgia Southern was an intern at the NCAA, and she told me about this new job that opened up. It was, at the time, it was assistant director of health and safety, and it kind of just, everything that I've done so far in my career, it was just kind of the perfect fit. And so came in, I interviewed, and I've been here since, that was 2008, end of 2008, so about a little over 5 years here at the NCAA.
Well, that's great. And I know you've done a fantastic job of getting involved with us specifically in strength and conditioning, but I know you do it with several other organizations, professions as well. But, what would you say, was the perception of strength and conditioning when you first got to the NCAA? And then I know that you've been an advocate in fighting. What do you think it is now?
So, honestly, the perception at first is not positive at all. I mean, just not. It was always negative. It's always the whole, the dumb jock perception, the meathead, perception. And seriously, that in the conversations that I would have with, in the office, out of the office, it just wasn't very positive. And so I really got involved because my feelings would be hurt. Like, they're saying these things, like I was in the weight room, like, you're talking about me, like.
Right.
Part of it, I really wanted to be an advocate for strength and conditioning because I didn't like the conversation. And I heard this quote, if you don't like the conversation, change it. And so that's what I've been trying to do, is trying to change the conversation about strength and conditioning, that these are credentialed professionals. These are very well-educated professionals, that they deserve, they have a role in the medical model on the sports medicine team or the sport performance team. That they have the same footing as an athletic trainer, as a sports dietitian, everyone that kind of works together for student athlete health and well-being. The strength and conditioning coach has a place there too. And I've been doing part of some of the stuff that I do. I've been doing a couple of campus visits, just kind of seeing what's going on. What's your day-to-day life? Like, I've been to a couple of schools already. I'm going to actually go down to my alma mater at Coastal next month. And, just kind of seeing some of the stuff that you guys do on a day-to-day basis, and understanding so we can get an understanding of when stuff passes, or we have conversations on a national level, we kind of have a better understanding how it might affect you on the ground level or at the campus level. Mm-hmm. So I think now that when it comes to the perception, it's the needle's moving. It's not exactly, it's not exactly positive yet.
Sure.
But I think through a lot of conversations with Chuck at CSCCa and Boyd at NSCA, and being a part of both organizations, I got recertified last year with NSCA. So I think that helps. So I've been having conversations, on a national level with both organizations, and then also within within the national office here at the NCAA, and just throughout, meetings that I go to, because I do a lot in sport performance in general. And, I really want to make sure that everyone kind of understands what this role of a strength and conditioning coach is, what we do on a day-to-day basis, and that they have equal footing as part of the medical model. And so I think the needle is moving when it comes to the perception. It's still not entirely positive, but I think people are starting to understand. They're starting to ask more questions. Well, what is it that you do? What is it that you don't do? And, because really in the beginning, the perception was so negative, because when we look at, catastrophic deaths or, catastrophic injuries, things like sickle cell trait and heat illness, those kind of sudden cardiac deaths, that's when you look at, the situation that was going on, the student athlete was usually under the supervision of the strength coach. And so, things that are happening during conditioning drills. And so that's kind of how the perception got to be so bad, because there was data to show that of these catastrophic injuries, these student athletes were under the care of this person. And so you had data pointing to the strength coach as the bad guy. And so trying to help everyone understand, just the role of this strength coach, and they're not the bad guy. They're not someone who's out here hurting athletes. That they're making sure that they're not, in the training room every day. They're making sure that they're going to class. Strength coaches has a tremendous influence with student athletes, and you have a very intimate, I guess, for lack of a better word, relationship with student athletes. Unlike the athletic trainer might have, because you may not see the athletic trainer very often if you're not injured, whereas you're going to see the strength coach throughout your season and through the off season, a couple hours each time. So just trying to get everyone to kind of understand what the role of the strength and conditioning coach is. So that's kind of the work that I've been doing, and the needle, I think, is moving, but we still have a lot of work to do.
No, I can't agree with you more. I think one of the biggest questions that I've always had, is the medical model per se, versus the coaching model. With what you found and what you're presenting, would strength coaches be better served going more the coaching model? Like, we're a part, instead of being part of this medical model. Would it be better if we kind of positioned ourselves as the 10th football coach or the 4th volleyball coach, or and instead of coaching running backs, we coach strength, because when you do go and you talk to these strength coaches, I would assume that most of their day-to-day operations, most of their daily duties are more coaching related, organizational related than they are maybe part of that medical model. Obviously that's an important factor, and I don't think most strength coaches would argue that when I train, I want our full. I mean, it's like a practice. I want our full medical staff there, because that's not my specialty. That's not my specialty. But I always thought that when you position yourself like that, then it's hard to kind of come across, especially versus maybe an MD or something along those lines, to kind of get your point across, versus in that coaching world, and seasons of play and things like that. It's a little bit easier to kind of get your point across.
Well, I think that's where the contention is right now. That's where the conversation is right now. Is what's best for the profession. What's best for individual campuses. That do the strength conditioning staff, are they coaching, part of coaching staff, or are they part of this sports performance, sports medicine staff? And I think both have pros and cons to it, but I think being a part of that, even if you position yourself as a coach, but somehow making sure that there's a connection with the medical model.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's really what we're kind of advocating for, that sport performance team, kind of the same model as like the diabetes care team, where you have all these different professionals who are professionals in their own right, and they have their own, areas of expertise, but they're coming together to meet and talk about the patient, and to make sure that they get the best care for the patient, which in this case would be student athletes. Yeah. And so I understand that, the push and pull. I had a conversation with Chuck about this actually this week, about, what's the best place, because I understand that there's some contention in being a part of that medical model, because, because it could eventually go to, it's perceived that it could eventually be that the strength coach is overseen by the team physician, and then when the team physician is not there, then they're overseen by the athletic trainer, and your expertise are different, so athletic trainer can't sign off on the workouts you're doing. They should be there support as they are with any other practice, but not as a someone that's overseeing what you're doing or trying to say yay or nay of what's going on. So I understand the pushback from being a part of that model, because you probably want to try to avoid that situation, and that's not at all what we're trying to say. That's not at all what we're trying to do. We want everyone to kind of have equal footing, part of that sport performance team. And there's some universities that are doing it already. Like Baylor's got a good program, Michigan, University of Maryland, Texas, Oklahoma. So there's some folks that are already kind of doing this already. But it's really trying to make sure, because there's been some contention between the athletic trainer and the strength and conditioning coach. It's not a strong relationship right now. And so trying to help build trust with that, I think, is going to be the hardest thing that we're going to have to face over the next, however year or so.
Right. I don't
So that's
think and I think there's obviously, and you would agree that there's tons of examples of good and the way it should be done, and the interaction and the relationship. And I'm definitely not one of those guys that athletic trainers over here and strength coaches over here. We're all in this thing together. That's where I go back to.
Don't do that though.
What's that?
So many that don't do that.
No, you're agree. I agree. It's been this adversarial type of relationship for a lot of places, but it doesn't need to be. And that's kind of where I get back to, I look at Olympic sport countries with the high performance model, and and a lot of times the strength coach is the lead in that, and they're the collection of, they're meeting with the entire sports medicine team, and then they're the liaison to the head coach, and able to kind of bridge that gap between coach and medicine. And I see that more being our role, being involved on both sides. But the thing about it is I can walk into our head coach's office today and have a conversation about anything, versus sometimes it's not always the case with some of those the sports medicine team per se, and I think that's where I think there's value in maybe aligning ourselves as a profession in the coaching realm, because, and there's a lot of things. I think the argument early on was security. We're gonna align ourselves in the medical community because of security. Well, the reality is that it's not happening. Strength coaches are still getting let go for wins and losses, and has nothing to do with whether or not you're in this realm or that realm. Right. And then you compare it with salaries and things like that, and there's obviously places that are paying strength coaches very well. But the reality is that when you look at it compared to the roles and compared to an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator, where they got half the team versus the entire team, you can make an argument. You can make an argument for the fact that should be even a higher paying job, And so I just, I was just curious as to, with your research, where maybe you thought that would best fall, because I'm chasing guys down for class. I'm dragging a guy for down the field for accountability issues and things like that. That's not necessarily where does that fit in the medical model?
It doesn't.
So it's something I've kind of always sat back and really thought about. But kind of moving on.
We're tracking on. We're going to continue having discussions. Like, we want to kind of put together a not quite a task force, but maybe like a roundtable, like a one-day meeting. Bring in, folks from NSCA, CSCCa, a couple of guys in the field. Bring in an athletic trainer and some other folks, and just kind of have this conversation and just see where we stand and what we can do and how we can move forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea, and I think there's a lot of people that share that same opinion. Mm-hmm. Obviously where we're at and where it stands right now, getting having influence as as organizations, you know, what is the best way to have a positive impact, or in the decision making process? I know we have several great guys like Scott Bennett, doing a fantastic job, Don Decker, Chuck Stiggins and Boyd, and they're really fighting the good fight. And I always make the argument and the contention that we need to do a better job as strength and conditioning coaches supporting those individuals. But what's the best way for us as an organization or a profession to make that positive impact?
I think the best way right now is to have a consistent voice. Between the two organizations, there's been a lot of contention. We got one saying something and one, advocating for something else, and you serve the same population. And this is not just specific to strength and conditioning. I see this with, working with a lot of different organizations. There's, groups that serve the same population, our student athletes, and can't get along. Mm-hmm. And I think the best way to really be of influence is to have that consistent voice. Scott's doing a great job on our committee. He's an ad hoc member. So when there's questions about strength and conditioning, he's there to be able to answer those questions. And other ways is, start, some research, producing research papers and, maybe even a position stand like you mentioned earlier. I think that would really go a long way in understanding, hey, this is what we do. This is our position. This is how we conduct business. This is how we protect health. This is how we help student athletes succeed in many ways, on the field, in the classroom, because you help get them there. This is how we support student athlete well-being. And I think things like that would really go a long way. Through our Sport Science Institute newsletter, I'm the editor of that. I really want to be able to do a regular column on strength and conditioning. So, but right now I don't have enough content. So, getting you guys to, start writing some articles and, getting your name out there and talking about the profession. Like I have an article coming from, or Mike Gittleson actually wrote an article a couple months ago on the importance of training the head and neck. And it got a lot of hits. It seemed to be really popular. So just want to do more strength and conditioning articles, just highlights of what you guys have going on your campuses. We can try to build up our sport performance page on our website. And so I want to kind of feed from what's going on in our membership to kind of get everyone to kind of see what's, all the great things, all the positive stuff that you do, because the media is going to, when a kid dies or is hurt, the media is going to latch onto that and they're going to really talk about it. And so I want to kind of combat the negative stuff that's in the media with all these positive things that's going on. If you guys are in Indianapolis, can come in and get you in the studio and, interview just to talk about what you do or whatever. Yeah, so I think, those are some of the ways that you guys can, have more influence. But it really starts with having a consistent message from the two main organizations. There's others as well, but, we see more so NSCA and CSCCa certifications.
Right. And it's easy to sit back and say, well, we should be doing all this. Both of these organizations have done a phenomenal job of getting to where they're at and supporting and advocating for the strength coach. So I want to be very clear that, we got to stop pointing the finger.
Absolutely.
We got to stop pointing the finger and we got to say, you guys got to do this. It's really we, because both of those organizations are made up by the membership, and supported by the membership. And so, strength coaches, we got to get off our tail and do these things. But we talked a little bit off camera that you mentioned, writing a position paper on, legislation that comes out or proposed legislation or how we're going to teach the squat as an organization, whatever it's going to be. And I know we've done that a little bit with the NSCA, but I've yet to see a paper or position statement on the 5 strength coach rule or the 20% protein, deal, whatever it is. We should be coming out with, this is the CSCCa or the NSCA's position on this legislation, and at least then, through PR and things like that, we can get our voice heard. And
sports dietitians are doing that.
No doubt. Yeah, absolutely doing that. And when you go to an NATA event, I mean, you're voting on things that are going to be pushed forward or proposed and pushed forward, and we need to be doing that. It doesn't need to be just a 3-day, go to a couple presentations and then we're going to go hang out at the bar or whatever. It needs to be productive meetings. And I know, again, both organizations are doing that, working towards that. And a lot of great is happening, but it can only happen if the membership gets more involved.
Yeah, one thing that you guys could do is try to be more involved in the legislative process or in various NCAA committees. There's about, I don't know, almost 100 different committees from the national office, and those committees are always made up of folks from the membership. And so trying to get more involved in those things. So talking to your compliance officer, talking to your athletic director about getting involved when those things come up, when there's, and this is something I can make sure to, keep you in the loop of, what our so-and-so committee is looking for, an additional person. I can make sure to keep you in the loop on that. But, getting more involved. We don't really see strength and conditioning coaches on these things, except for the competitive safeguards committee where Scott Bennett currently serves. So that's one way to kind of get more involved is to see about those committees and how can you find a place and get your voice heard through that way.
No, I think that's a great idea, and definitely reaching out to me and the organizations. I think putting that out there. I think there are people that want to be involved, and I would suggest also with the writing and the contributing to the report is the topics. The hard part. I know for me. It's coming up with the topics. If you told me, hey, give me 3 ways to protect against athlete injury in the weight room, I could do that. I can knock that out. Thinking of that sometimes is hard for me to do, especially with all the other things going on, and I think most strength coaches operate that way. And so I think there are people out there that want to contribute and help. We just got to find the ways collectively to get those people and to hold each other accountable. I know Scott Bennett does that to me quite a bit. Holds me accountable. I hold him accountable, and we're both in this to kind of to help make it better. I know there's tons of people like that. You mentioned the 2 organizations. This is something I fought with, and I don't know the right answer here. And I'm involved with both, and I think both are great for different reasons. Is having 2 organizations, is that hurting us? Like you said, that one voice. Or what are some ways that you see within those 2 organizations to have that one voice to push forward our message?
First off, I don't think it's hurting you to have the 2 organizations, and because I see this a lot with organizations who serve either student athletes and then maybe elite athletes, or even the layperson, the weekend warrior, because the collegiate realm is very specific. There's legislation to think about. There's student athlete well-being to think about. There's a lot that within the collegiate realm that needs to be a focus. So I totally understand why there's 2 organizations, because one is really collegiate specific and it needs to be. NSCA has a collegiate arm, but they're much more expansive than that, which is good. And they have, the journals and the research and all that. I do think it's, the problem is, getting the collegiate realm within one group and the entire other group to kind of work together on the voice, because you're serving the same population. We have a lot of strength coaches are certified through both, and so trying to, get you guys to be able to not fight against what one or the other is saying, trying to really support the strength and conditioning coach, because that's what I don't see when when we're working with various organizations. It's, it's about me, then it's about me. And it's, what one really striking thing that I found is when I would talk to someone and, the 15 minutes that you have with me, you're spending 13 of it talking about somebody else. And it's like, well, why am I talking to you? Clearly this person has more importance and I should be talking to them. Right. And so I think it's just, understanding that you serve the same population, understanding that we serve student athletes first, and then we serve the profession.
Yeah.
And so I think that, having that same consistent message of why are we here, and who do we serve, and it's our student athletes, and it's our fellow strength coaches. So I think it's moving towards that direction. I've been having some conversations independently, and it'll be interesting to see how this roundtable goes once we get everyone together. And I think from there, that will be our goal, is to have a group that we can reach out to say, here's something that's coming down the pipeline. You can distribute it to all of your membership. Or if we have a question about something, whether it's, do you rather be called a strength and conditioning coach or a strength and conditioning specialist? We can kind of reach out, kind of a two-way communication. And so that's what we would like to do. And hopefully out of this, this roundtable, we will be able to do that.
Sure. No, that makes complete sense. When you're talking, you mentioned legislation there, and when these, like these things pass, like the 5-strength coach rule and things like that, what is the best method to A, hear about those things ahead of time, and B, try to, head things off? Because, and we beat this to death, and you and I have talked about it several times, on the 5-strength coach deal. But, like, to me, the biggest issue was protecting against hiding football coaches in the weight room and then having them be involved on the practice field, to me, that could have been simply solved with they have to be certified and they're only in the weight room, or something along those lines. What's the best method to work within our current abilities to address those types of things?
The best method is to work with your compliance coordinator, because that specific rule didn't have any health and safety implications. So I didn't even see it until it came, it was voted on. And so, working with your compliance officers, because they're the ones who vote at our convention. They're the ones who come, because I was at the NCAA convention in January out in San Diego. And, when it comes to those voting sessions, everyone has a lanyard, and it's a different color. And, this one, you have speaking rights but no voting rights. One is you have voting rights but no speaking rights. Then you have both, or you have neither. And that's what I had. I had neither. Even though I presented and I was there for several meetings, I can't speak unless I directly ask a question about, something specific, and I can't vote. And so having strength coaches kind of, have those meetings or conversations with your compliance officers and understand the process, and building those relationships so you can kind of stay in the loop with what's going on. Having that relationship with your athletic director so they can see, hey, it clearly said in the legislation, strength and conditioning coach. So they can kind of see that and, let me go and talk to Ron and see what he thinks about this. Right. So I think it really starts with building those relationships on campus with those compliance folks, because they're the ones who are moving things forward and working with the conference offices, and they're the ones who are voting on this legislation when it comes forward at the convention.
Mm. I think that's a situation where, again, you look at most situations and it's almost this adversarial role against compliance, but it really needs to be, working in conjunction and obviously working within the rules. And, most places, right, you can accomplish that, I think every strength coach wants to benefit the student athlete, which is ultimately why a lot of these things are developed. But yeah, getting out, and it goes back to being a professional, and we talk about that quite a bit on the show, being a professional and going out and getting outside of your four walls of your weight room and having those types of conversations with people that, it's a team approach, for you to have the success that you want to have as an organization. So I couldn't agree with you more.
You identified that as a need, that's one thing that I've learned is kind of a gap in services that we provide, because we work with athletic trainers, we work with coaches, we work with various folks on campus, but we really don't do much work with strength and conditioning coaches. So that's one thing that I've been trying to do, with our leadership development department here at the office. They do a lot of, they have this Future Coaches Academy. They have this NFL, NCAA Athletics Professionals Summit. So that was a couple of weeks ago in Phoenix. I was able to get Coach Ivy from Mizzou came down. He opened up some spots for strength coaches. So, and a lot of the programs that they have going on, like a lot of professional development stuff, we're trying to get more strength and conditioning coaches involved, because, that's a need that you guys have to be able to, how do we do this? How do we, better have these relationships within our athletic department, or, how do we go and talk to the AD about, whatever it is, whether it's, equipment for the weight room, or, building a new center, or whatever it is that you're looking for. And so I've definitely identified that, and we're trying to work to help. That's one of the sessions that we just did at NSCA in January. We're going to do a follow-up to that at CSCCa in May. So whatever we can do to kind of help with those kind of things, please let me know. And we're trying to at least get more strength and conditioning coaches involved in our leadership development and our professional development type programs.
No, I think that's great. I think, I've talked to Chuck about this, and I think, just in brainstorming here, I think getting a presentation where, it would almost be a compliance type presentation, because I know, I've been at several different schools, and I've talked to strength coaches across the country, and everybody's interpretation is a little different, and I think hearing it straight from the horse's mouth and getting, okay, these are the rules or the legislation that specifically pertains to the strength and conditioning professional, and here's things that are coming up, or, I think that's a great presentation at those national conferences.
What? I'm going to do that at CSCCa in May. It'll be at the Master Strength Coaches Breakfast, and I've been working with our academic and membership affairs as the department here, and with outlining all of that, all this legislation that affects strength coaches. And so, I'm not sure how much time Chuck has given me on the schedule, but we're going to go through some of those things.
Yeah, and again, I think that's great. But it's also just, it's the master strength coaches. That's not the entire organization, and it's the guy that's, it's the young Ron McKeefery at South Florida that doesn't really know who to where and what to ask to really understand things completely, that needs to hear it the most, and I don't know if we're doing that. So, but I appreciate you doing it. I think that's something that we need to kind of push as strength coaches to get it on the main docket. But
yeah.
I know you're busy. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. We always end these shows with some resources here. So give me a favorite quote.
Well, one of my favorite quotes is, "It's the breach between what we know and what we do is lethal." And it really has a lot to do, I think about it a lot when it comes to health and wellness. You're like, you shouldn't be eating the French fries and the donuts and the things like that, but you do it anyway.
That's right.
And so trying to kind of bridge that gap, it's kind of been my passion in health and fitness and well-being is, trying to get people to understand, bridge that gap between what we know we should or shouldn't do and actually what, making those behavior changes.
Oh, that's great. That's a great one. What about, a book recommendation, an app, and a website recommendation?
So for a book, I've been reading two books, The Speed of Trust by Franklin Covey, and then also Switch, and it's about change and how to change when change is hard, and it's really helped me a lot in my in my work, and just because it teaches you to kind of understand where the bright spots in things. We get a lot of working at the NCAA, hear a lot of complaints, a lot of what's wrong, and
right.
It used to be annoyed by that, but now I start to look at it differently. Like, well, you know what? That's something that's going on with you right now on your campus or wherever you are, and so how can we figure out something change? What's the bright spot in the situation, and how can we capitalize on that to make a more broad change? So
no, that's great. What about an app and a website?
So for an app, I travel a lot. So Gate Guru is one of my favorites. It tells me where everything is within, in the airport. I pretty much is, or where the post office is, because sometimes I gotta do those kind of things in the middle of it all too. So that's kind of one of the things that I really I use a lot.
And then a website?
There's no specific website that I go to a lot. I'm a history buff, so when I'm just don't want to think about work or anything like that, so I'll go to history.com, or I have the Civil War history app on iPad, and it's called Civil War Today, and so because I really like Civil War and presidents, and so it's it's a place that I'll go to just kind of see, hey, what was Indiana like in 1863, and just kind of understand, where our, founding fathers and
That's awesome.
so yeah, so it's not, health or fitness related, just, something to get away and understand what, kind of where we came from and just.
Well, it's important, you have to have, releases as a strength and conditioning coach, or as as busy as anybody that's in athletics is. You got to get away from it, and I think that's huge. So I appreciate those.
Yeah.
Well, Latrice, I tons of great information. I truly appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with us. Where is there any place that you would like to direct people to go to communicate with you, or Twitter or anything along those lines?
Yeah, you can on Twitter. My personal account is at Latrice Sales. Our NCAA Sport Science Institute is NCAA_SSI on Twitter. Our website ncaa.org/SSI. We can find information about what we have going on. We've got lots of resources. We want to build up the resources on sport performance and strength and conditioning. So. You can email me, send me information that we can add to our website, or if you're interested in writing an article, it's lsales@ncaa.org. So shoot me an email, and feel free to shoot me another one if I don't get back to you in a week or so, because I do travel a lot, so it's sometimes tough to catch up. So some days I'll just kind of lock myself in the hotel room and just catch up on a day's worth of emails. So feel free to reach out on social media or shoot me an email.
Well, I truly appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, guys, a couple quick things before we let you go. Don't forget to check out eliteform.com and ignitionapg.com and let them know how much we appreciate them bringing the show to you for free. Check out Ignition's speed certification that they're offering here in April, and highly recommend that as well. It was awesome to have Latrice Sales on the show today. Please join me in the comments section at ronmckeefery.com thanking Latrice for coming on the show and sharing her info with us. All the show notes for this episode and the others with the links that were mentioned are on the site as well. While you're there, join the mailing list so that you get updates on new shows and anything else I have going on as well. If you haven't checked out strength-ondemand.com, make sure you do so. It's a fantastic resource, and I know you'll love it. Lastly, if you would please subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube and leave us a positive rating and review so that we can continue to bring this show to as many strength coaches as possible. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Take care.